Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update, and this is a pretty big one. Avatar News has this big exclusive reveal about Avatar Studios and some of their upcoming projects. This one is particularly interesting because it's the first time we've heard anything about them working on a series in quite a while. Everything in the last year has pretty much been movie focused. We know they're doing 3 movies. The first one's going to be ATLA focused. There's been rumors about some of the other ones. But it feels like in the middle of all that, what was initially planned, what Avatar Studios said they would initially be, a studio that makes movies, series, short form content, and spin-offs, that seems to have been forgotten, and we're only focusing on one of those things. But it seems now that that original idea of everything in a way being worked on at roughly the same time is actually the case. So obviously there's still a lot of questions coming out of this, and before you even get into this one, we do have to note that Avatar News also mentions that he will have news tomorrow that apparently will clear a lot of things up. So this has got people talking. I don't know if there's necessarily a lot of things that need to be cleared up. We'll get to, I suppose, what that theoretically means once we get through this. So what the news is, the next Avatar animated series featuring the Earth Avatar after Aang and Korra, or just after Korra, is coming in 2025 from Paramount and Avatar Studios. So, Avatar Studios is working on the next Avatar after Aang and Korra, an original animated streaming series set in the future after Legend of Korra, following the next Earth Avatar in the cycle, coming in 2025. So that's the big thing here, is that series in 2025, when the only thing that's been announced so far has been movies. Very vague details. I don't think anyone would have expected that this is where a series might have happened, that maybe this will get announced the following year and we'll get the series in 2026, in between the first 2 movies or something like that. But no, it does seem like they're planning to do a pretty big 2025 launch year with a movie and a series, which I think is probably one of the best things to do to show what Avatar Studios can be. So, then, there's more. An animated movie featuring this Avatar and their era is coming to theaters in the years after the show comes out. I can't reveal more specific dates yet, but it won't be an insanely long wait. I'm not really sure if he means necessarily that it won't be a long wait between the series and the movie, or just that his reveal of specific dates won't be an insanely long wait, given that he says there will be news tomorrow. But anyway, that doesn't matter too much. Currently, we don't know how far into the future this Avatar's era will be set, but a very rough approximation is that it's set about 100 years after Korra's time. It will be in Avatar worlds equivalent to our world present day. Now, I think the logic here is probably that, well, there was 70 years between ATLA and Korra, and that is factoring the fact that Aang technically died relatively young, at 66, 67. So this is giving the idea that, okay, let's guess that Korra won't die young and will live a bit longer than Aang. And okay, that means she roughly lives at least into her 90s, which is a pretty good run. Because again, it's there are outliers who live super long lives in Avatar, but that is not the normal. Is basically the way that seems to work. So 100 years would probably give it that Korra dies in her 90s, which again I think is relatively fine. That also means that you can do a relatively large gap that is 100 years, and we already have quite high technology by where we are right now in Korra. So this would put this series very close, if not right there, in effectively modern day. Now, obviously, modern day, whatever Avatar is, in terms of how would the modern world develop, if bending was a thing, and how does that affect spirits and so on. There's a lot of very interesting ideas with going forward in the timeline. But anyway, 2025 is going to be a huge launch year for Avatar Studios, with the adult Aang movie coming to theaters October 10th. That's officially confirmed that that's happening. They haven't necessarily confirmed the full it's adult Aang, but it's the only thing that makes sense, that it's late teens YA Aang and the rest of the cast, as well as a new streaming series in the same year. It's not a mistake. They are intentionally releasing both in the same year, part of a much bigger plan. So I'm wondering if the news tomorrow is maybe more of what that exact plan is. So it's implied that the movie is the first project of any kind. This would imply that the series would come out after that. And this is where like it's almost this idea of like, oh, is there maybe the potential that some of these other things like a spin-off or some of the short form content, they drop that much sooner than we expect, kind of surprising us with that. But who knows? So yeah, this would mean that like if they hit their date here, October 10th for the movie, this also being planned for 2025 means it has to happen in either November or December, like pretty quickly afterwards. And this is obviously the idea of, they seem to have the full support of Paramount, Viacom, whatever, but they need content for Avatar on their platform. And sure, the movie can eventually go up there after its theatrical run, but I think you want this is the only place you can watch Avatar thing. And so it makes sense that a series would also be prioritized as a way to drive people towards Paramount Plus. So anyway, there of course could be delays. And of course the idea is that if either of these two get delayed, suddenly they're both 2026 projects and stuff like that. But again, they're working on multiple projects in parallel right now. That's what they had always planned for Avatar Studios. Just mention some of the other stuff coming up. Yeah, 2025, that could be a huge year. Like, imagine we get an animated movie and an animated series all in 2025, plus whatever comics and novels and stuff like that also released during the year. That could be incredible. And that's the whole point of Avatar Studios, is to get us to a point where we have all of these different avenues working in tandem at basically the same time. To get from the relative sort of content drought we've been in for the last couple of years to get to there where we're suddenly dealing with a lot of stuff. So again, he clarifies that the artwork is just a mock-up, it's not official, and they don't know what the new Avatar will look like yet. So yeah, that's just like way your wing, of course. So, in a way, so what's the confusion? What needs to be cleared up from this necessarily? I think the only thing, there's a few things here. The people's reaction to this has mainly been like, you know, there's been a lot of interesting new Avatar series. There's that reaction of just the way the projects are planning out. But also this effectively means that, okay, they're committing to doing stuff in a future era, meaning that it's somewhere in the writing of this series, it is written that Korra dies at some point. And obviously that has Korra fans upset, of course, just to know that that happens at some point. And I get it. Like, I understand why Korra fans read this and feel like Korra is being forgotten. We're moving past her era into something else. And that's exactly what we're doing. It's just, it doesn't mean what you think it is, the fact that we just have another era. The whole point of Avatar Studios, and I think we've even seen this across the comics and the novels and stuff like that, that Avatar Legends, the franchise, the whole point is that they're legends from across time. Each Avatar is their own era of the world. We can go back in and cover stuff with Aang, with Korra. We can go back to Wan and cover new avatars from the past. That's why they're doing the Kyoshi novels, why we're doing Yang Chen novels, why we got the Roku content in the Legends RPG game, and while we're still excited to get more stuff on the likes of Karuk, find out more about Avatar Zito. Who is Avatar Salai? Who is Avatar Gun? From all those references to other avatars that we know about. Just in this case, it's like, look at what happened to Aang. When Korra was announced and they made this specific decision, and Mike and Brian have said this in interviews and stuff like that, they made a choice that when they got a new series confirmed, that they didn't want to just do basically an ATLA, sequel series directly. They wanted to do something new, and that interested them creatively. But that was obviously back in a time when they would only get confirmed for one series. And we know about some of the production struggles and like how they had to fight to get the amount of episodes that they did and all this stuff from throughout sort of even ATLA and Korra's run. Avatar Studios opens the door a lot more. But the reality of it is that when Korra got announced, it also got announced at basically the same time, Avatar The Last Airbender comics. And as Korra was airing, we got some of the most significant Aang content we've kind of ever got in The Promise, The Search especially, The Rift, Smoke and Shadow, North and South, Imbalance. And now we're obviously in a bit of a weird situation over the last few years where the comics have, fallen a little bit, and I think they're trying to build them back up again. But we also have the novels highlighting that we haven't moved on from just these like past avatars, the likes of, Korra, Kyoshi, Yang Chen. We are telling new stories with them in 2021, 2022. We are expecting Yang Chen Book 2 next year in 2023. We are getting Avatar comics, the Azula comic, in next year as well. We are getting apparently some sort of Korra comic trilogy where Mako is going to be the focus in at least one of these books again next year. So there's proof already that we are getting Korra stuff. Now I understand it. Korra has not had a great run of things this year because it's the 10-year anniversary of Korra this year, in case anyone forgot. But it hasn't felt like that for the most part because it has not had like any merchandise for the most part this year, and it hasn't really felt special in a way, even given that we have Avatar Studios in place. And obviously this is stuff that is planned ultimately for 2025, and we're still 3 years away from this. And so the hope is that they gradually begin to ramp up and just improve things across the board. But that's the point. Like, I get Korra fans being upset about this, but it doesn't mean what you think it means. This isn't the end of Korra's story, that they'll never come back to her, because they didn't do that with Aang. They didn't just say, Aang died, now Korra's the Avatar, you are never getting any content. Like I said, we got all those comics, and sure, there's still, I suppose, a frustration about the fact that we still haven't really gone particularly hard into the gap between ATLA and Korra, and there's so much else to explore. And the worry, I guess, is that we're creating another one of these gaps now between Korra and the next Avatar that might take a while to actually get to exploring. But I do think we're in a slightly better position at this point, because I think they know more about what they want to explore with Avatar from a broad perspective. And that's why some of these like animated projects, spin-offs, again, keep in mind they're going to do short form content for stuff as well. They're going to cover some of these other characters in this stuff. Like, I know the kind of rumors that one of the movies is Korra, one of the movies is Kyoshi, was maybe one of the few exclusives that Avatar News sort of a little bit backtracked on because he wasn't particularly happy with that source. But that still seems like a reasonable opportunity. I think in many ways what he might need to clear up going forward is the whole idea of this movie. The movie featuring this Avatar. Is this one of the three that has been announced so far, or is this like a fourth movie? That will be sort of telling, because if that is the case, that means 2 of the 3 movie slots are kind of filled up. So that leaves one more movie for, you would guess, either Korra or Kyoshi. But even if one of them doesn't get the movie, they still might get a spin-off series. They still might get the sort of animated short form content treatment. And then just because they only announced the first 3 movies doesn't mean that's the only movies they're ever going to do. There's more. They're going to do another series after this. That's what they said at the start, is that it was all of these different types of projects in plural. We're going to get series, movies, spin-offs, and multiple short form contents, in addition to comics and novels and stuff like that. That's the whole point of Avatar Studios, is to expand the franchise and hopefully explore some of this stuff more. And I think just the fact that finally they are making a movie that is exploring Team Aang, the Aang Gang, as adults, is huge. That's a huge sign that they are willing to do the stuff that fans want. That would have been one of those things where, like, if they got confirmed for just, say, like, one movie, say Avatar Studios didn't exist, they get one movie from Paramount, I don't think they would necessarily do the adult Aang movie. I think they would try to do something new and a little bit more experimental. But because they now have the room to do pretty much everything, they can give fans what they want while also still exploring creatively what they want to do also. So, look, there's still a lot of communication that needs to happen from Avatar Studios with the fandom. It still has to be acknowledged that while Avatar News has a good track record with information, this is still rumored, insider, kind of leaked information at this point in time, and we're still waiting for an official confirmation on really what we're doing with the franchise. But this ultimately does make sense. As for, I suppose, a little bit of a discussion on sort of like present day Avatar, I think I've discussed this every once in a while. My tendency, like when Avatar Studios was first announced, was sort of that, look, I think we can get there eventually. It's probably, in my mind, not what they should maybe do in the first couple of projects, but they seem to have maybe bumped that up. And I suppose that's fine. I think they probably want to show in the first couple of projects that they are willing to go backwards, but they're also willing to go forwards. That's the best way to show that you're going to hit a bit of everything. You're going to show the full scope of Avatar Legends, basically. The fear here is that going full present day loses a lot of the charm of what Avatar actually is as a franchise. But you also don't want to get locked into too much of that sort of, Aang, Roku, Kyoshi, kind of Yang Chen era, and that stuff that's in or around that is the only thing you can ever do with Avatar that people like. So I get the idea, I get the impression that Mike and Brian are probably really excited at the prospect of, how does basically traditional stuff like spirits and bending and the idea of the Avatar, how does that interact with a fully modern world that almost, in many ways, what if it doesn't really need bending anymore? That sort of thing. What happens with the spirits in a modern world? Have they been pushed out again? Or how does that work with the sort of spirits more interlinked with technology and stuff like that? And then, like, if you have technology as, like, far as, say, computers and the internet, how does that work with everything? There are some very, very interesting ideas to explore here with the idea that, that you have that contrast of the things that people like in Avatar are a lot of the very sort of traditional elements of, like, the traditional martial arts behind bending, and the idea that if you are a bender, you pursue that, and that will often define your trajectory as, like, a person, especially for the Avatar. But what if the world has sort of fixed a lot of its things and they deal with it themselves? Because we already sort of saw this a little bit in Korra, the sense of a lot of the world leaders almost not really wanting to deal with the Avatar, and, not really acknowledging this kind of, ancient leadership position that sort of predates a lot of those things, but isn't necessarily, like, official in the modern world. And, like, there are ideas that I think are very, very cool. Then you obviously have the idea of, like, wait, what if a lot of this stuff does get really, really forgotten over time? And all of a sudden you have potentially a character who isn't even aware they're the Avatar and just has weird stuff happening to them. But because things have advanced so much, there aren't really many people around who are going to maybe notice these things about, like, oh, this character actually is a bender, and, they're actually a bender of all four elements, and they have all this spiritual stuff associated with them. There are options for a really, really interesting story in this. I think when they start to talk about this officially, I think the important thing is probably just to make it clear again in more of an official capacity. Like, again, if Avatar Studios themselves could put out some sort of a blog post or even like a video live stream announcement where they just explain that, like, yeah, we want to pursue a little bit of everything in Avatar. We want to go forward, we want to go back. So any worries about Aang or Korra, no, there will be content with them. Just official confirmation that, yeah, like, don't worry that specific characters that you like will be forgotten. You don't need to worry. So I I'm definitely like open to this, but again, it's going to take actually, I suppose, seeing some of this stuff. The prospect right now is that I think, yes, like I think a lot of fans, I would definitely lean more towards filling in some of the timeline that you have already before you go forward, just to avoid creating more gaps, basically more unfilled in time. But again, we have a lot of content with Avatar Studios, and the movie is already showing, the Aang movie is already showing that they're willing to fill in those gaps. And in my mind, I'm pretty confident that Korra will either be the other movie or we'll get something else. We'll get like a spin-off series or something like that. We'll get like a series, a mini-series or something like that. They will do something else with Korra, I think beyond even just the comics that they have right now. So I wouldn't be worried about that. And again, the whole idea of like, oh, they've technically, just with this announcement, killed off Korra. And the way I view that is more or less that like any Avatar who gets announced is going to die at some point. You know, because, you know, either they die and the cycle ends, or they die and the cycle continues. That's just the way Avatar works. You know, Kyoshi died, Roku died, Karuk died, Wan died, Aang died. Of course Korra dies at some point. That's the whole, in a way, kind of like point of the Avatar cycle, is that this role, this kind of spirit continues onwards, but the individual people die. The other point with Korra specifically is that because of the way the past lives work, she's going to be in this new series once they get to the new Avatar dealing with spirituality, because she is going to be the only past life for the new Avatar. So that gives her that full, like, almost like Roku role, because especially if we are very, very advanced, that Avatar is probably going to need a Korra to help them through this role. And so I wouldn't be surprised if, like, you maybe get like quite a bit of, you know, past life Korra in the new series, and that's another way we'll get stuff involving her character. And that's a kind of unique situation for her that you don't often have with a lot of the other characters, because like pretty much all the other Avatars before can go all the way back and touch on nearly any Avatar in history, but the new Avatar is only going to have one Avatar. And so that is an interesting aspect of that dynamic that happened in Korra continuing forward, in that the only, in a way, reference to Avatar's past that Avatar is going to have is either just what way modern world views past Avatars, or specifically through Korra remembering them. But they're my thoughts on this for now. Of course, like he says here, he does have some news coming tomorrow. He mentions it here and here. I'm eagerly awaiting what's actually going to happen here. And then also, this account mentions that you're all not ready for it. So I don't know if that means that they know what it is as well, or what. But anyway, so it does mean that I will try to get a news video out tomorrow also to cover the update on this topic. But what it also does mean is that anyone waiting for my year in review video, which I said I was going to drop today, obviously this big news, I do need to factor this in. I don't think it will change too much about the video, but it does mean I do have to wait. So I can't release it today because there's news dropping late tonight. And then tomorrow I'll have the news. Then it's Christmas. So realistically at this point, it does sort of delay the Avatar year in review video until realistically probably the 26th or the 27th. At which point the preview video also is going to need to go out at some point. Like, this is just the problem with end of year stuff always. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this. Next Avatar confirmed for a animated series, not a movie here. Another movie gets confirmed here, I guess. Unknown if it's part of the 3 or not. What are your thoughts on this and what this means? What does this mean for the plan of Avatar Studios? What do you think this means about, in a way, how will Korra get treated once this actually happens, and so on? But they're my thoughts on this. In the comments, let me know. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.